Hey everyone, welcome back to Popular Preparedness. How is fire overrated? Isn't fire one of the most essential things in survivalism? People seem to say so. That's why they say you should carry like 2 lighters, a ferro rod, have like 6 different ways to start a fire. But here's the simple fact, is that most of the time, if you're in a survival situation, you don't need a fire. In many survival situations, a fire could get you killed. If you're trying to stay unnoticed, a fire is a bad idea. If you're trying to pass through an area unnoticed, a fire is a bad idea. If you're trying to cover significant amounts of ground as fast as you can, a fire is just a waste of time. Most of the foods that we have today are pre-cooked. Many of the foods that we have can be soaked in water, and they don't necessarily need to be cooked in order to be rehydrated. Long-distance hikers, many of them have started moving towards not having any cook kit, not cooking, going for months and months on a long-distance trail covering vast swaths of territory without cooking. Long-distance runners don't cook. They don't want to carry a propane canister. They don't want to carry fuel. They won't want to have to carry fire. They don't want to have to carry a cook kit to cook something in. It's just easier to take calories that don't need cooking. A lot of situations, a fire is not really all that important. If you are cold and you're trying to cover territory, as long as you have a headlamp, you can keep walking. That will warm you up. A lot of situations like that. If you're in an urban environment and you're trying to survive, you'll probably be able to take shelter in a house, in a building, and that will give you significant warmth. A sleeping bag, heat blanket, these things will provide more warmth to you than a fire will in a lot of cases. If you're not killing something and cooking it over the fire, you probably don't need a fire, even if it is cold. If you have proper clothing, if you are watching yourself, making sure that after exerting yourself significantly and sweating a lot, that you change your clothes and put on dry clothes, as long as you're making sure that you have proper heat reflecting materials for sleeping, whether it's a sleeping bag, heat blanket, these type of things. If you don't have any of that, you can scrounge up leaves and pile them on top of yourself. This is an important thing too. Fires oftentimes are more trouble than they're worth. And what do they really do for you? Most of the heat gets dispersed. Now, okay, you can build a wall to reflect that heat into your little hut. But here's the thing. How much of the day are you going to spend building that hut? If you're trying to cover territory, you're trying to travel, it's a huge, huge waste of time to building a full shelter, building a fire pit, reflecting rocks, and build the fire itself, and build up enough firewood to get you through the night. A lot of that's just a lot of work. It's a lot easier to just find an existing shelter. Most of us live in places where there's shelters everywhere. On long-distance trails, hikers are often known for crashing in in latrines, because it's a roof, and that's a roof is a roof. There's just so many situations where a fire is a bad idea. Not only because it can give your position away, it can draw other people to you, but also it's just a lot of trouble. Native Americans, they didn't build, as we call them, big white man fires, where there's just flames going everywhere. They would build a small fire, cook what they needed to cook, and then they'd move on. A lot of times, if you cook somewhere, if you do slaughter an animal and you're cooking the meat, a lot of times what you need to do is you need to move your location and sleep somewhere else, or else you have all that meat juices and all that smell around there. You're going to attract wildlife that you don't want to have with you, okay? Like bears, wolves, if you have territory like that, or even like cougars or mountain lions. There's a significant problem with fires and doing that type of cooking. If you're trying to cover territory, just keep walking. Keep walking and make sure you have the proper gear to weather cold temperatures. Make sure you have a poncho. Make sure you have things to keep you dry. Make sure that you have chosen clothing that will keep you warm even when it gets wet. Wool will keep you warm when it's wet. That's what folks in the olden days used to use a lot of. Canvas will keep you warm even when it's wet. A lot of synthetic materials nowadays, they will keep you warm even when it's wet. Don't wear cotton. Denim is cotton. Those type of things, they do not keep you warm once they're wet. So choosing appropriate clothing, choosing sleeping bags, other things that go along with that. Because you see people do this. They have 6 different ways to start a fire. And it's like, well, in case my matches don't work, I have lighters. And in case I have my lighters don't work, I have a ferro rod. And in case that doesn't work, I have a magnifying glass. And in case that doesn't work, I have this battery with some steel wool. It's just like, if your lighter doesn't work, it doesn't matter. You don't really need the fire. If you get wet, are you wearing clothes that will keep you warm when you're wet? That's a bigger issue. If you're out there wearing cotton, yeah, you might need a fire now if you get wet. If you make smart choices on the front end, you won't have to have as many redundancies and as many things to follow on the backside. So that's my thought on it. I see a lot of survivalists are just over the top about fire. And living out in the woods, I hiked the entire Appalachian Trail. I've done a lot of camping out in the woods. When I was serious about accomplishing something, I didn't build a fire. When I was hanging out and eating Doritos and chilling for a weekend at a campsite, I had a fire. We had to have a fire because it's fun to play with, right? But when I was hiking long distance, when I was climbing mountains, when I was doing things like this, not only do you not have a fire, but sometimes you don't even have a cook kit with you because the weight is a burden. So just think through things. Don't just accept them because somebody's trying to sell you a ferro rod and look how cool I am and I can start a fire with just this twig and some shoelaces and who cares? Who cares? You don't need a fire. In a lot of cases, you don't. Fire is a tool. I don't go backpacking with a hammer because in most cases out in the woods, I don't need a hammer. Think through what you want to use it for. Think through what you're trying to do. Carry the appropriate tools and don't carry any more tools than you need to. I go out with a lighter, maybe 2. And that's it. I can figure it out from there. I haven't died yet, and you probably won't either. Pack an extra med kit. That might come in a little more in handy. All right, Steve Poplar, out.